It's Tuesday on Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand. Happy to be back for another day. Hope you guys are having a great day out there today. Busy one coming up today. Wild and Wolves play late tonight. Wolves at Lakers, 9 p.m. Game 2 of that series. If you thought 9 p.m. was a little bit of a difficult lift, 10 p.m. for the Wild game at Vegas, which should be punishable by, I don't know, it should be a punishable offense to put a local market playoff game between one of the two teams on at anything later than 9:30 in someone's time zone. 10 p.m. is utterly ridiculous. I think it's going to get over at like 12:30 in the morning on a weeknight. I'm going to stay up for it. I don't know if you are. I'm sure we'll talk about it a ton on tomorrow's show. Post-game Wolves podcast tonight after that game ends. I'm sure I'll have one eye on that, one eye on the Wild game as that one is maybe wrapping up or into the third period as we're recording that. Ryan Kostecka, Star Tribune sports editor, will hop on that one with me, the Wolves post-game podcast. Sure, we'll have a little bit more on that tomorrow morning as well, but listen for that late tonight. Or if you go to bed right after the game, look for that as soon as you get up in the morning because that will be there ready and waiting for you. Break down both of those upcoming games at the end of the show here, things I think we should be watching for tonight. Bobby Nightengale Jr. from the Star Tribune joins me here in a few minutes as well to talk Twins. 7-15. Is the sky falling? In a lot of our worlds, it is. In Royce's world, it is. Bobby, a little bit more measured than Patrick Royce. I don't know if you can believe that. But he does acknowledge that this is an important week. You would not think necessarily that a stretch of home games against the White Sox and Angels are all that important, but it has become that right now, even in April. White Sox are bad again. 3 games against the White Sox starting tonight, and then a few more against the Angels, a team that this is where they started their 12-game win streak last year. These two teams, they were 7-13 last year, launched themselves on a 12-game winning streak by playing these two teams. Angels are better than that this year, but still an opportunity for them. If they can win a couple series, feel better about themselves, maybe they at least kind of tamp down the notion that the sky is falling. If they go 2-4 or something like that on this homestand, anything maybe less than 4-2, even a 3-3 homestand wouldn't feel that great because you're still sitting then 8 games under 500. Then we can really signal the alarm bells. That's what Bobby says at least. So we'll get to Bobby, everything that's gone wrong, things that maybe could go right, maybe some bad luck they've had in a little bit. First, though, what did I miss? Let's talk Vikings and the draft a little bit today. We'll talk more tomorrow with Emily Leiker from the Star Tribune, our newest Vikings writer. She's been aboard for about 6 months. She's been doing a lot of draft prep. We're going to talk to her about Vikings and draft. But right now, Kevin O'Connell talked yesterday, and as an entry point into one of the things he said, I'll play that clip in a minute, and as an entry point to one of those things he said, I want to run through 2 questions from listener Jay. First one, if the depth at running back and maybe interior defensive line is as great as the experts are saying, might Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah benefit more this year than he has in the past with a move that Rick Spielman always got so much grief for, to acquire a few more 6th and 7th rounders for the end of the draft? It's a good question. I think we can answer this by saying I would be in favor of acquiring more picks, but I don't necessarily think 6th and 7th rounders are what I would be after if I was the Vikings, and I don't think that's necessarily what Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah is going to be after either, because I think the Vikings have come to appreciate the premium nature of picks. I think they got a little greedy in that 2022 draft, tried to plug a lot of holes with, trading down, things like that. It was still into spots where you could conceivably get good players. They weren't trading down into the 6th or 7th round, but I think that they value talent more than they value quality over quantity. We saw that in last year's draft where they weren't afraid to move up. Got J.J. McCarthy, got Dallas Turner. Jury's still out on both of those guys. McCarthy because he got hurt and didn't play last year. Turner because they brought him along slowly. Didn't necessarily have a big rookie impact, but a lot expected of both of those guys this year. Premium picks, first-round picks. they will pay the price for that. This year, though, they only have 4 picks, right? They have a first, a third, a fifth, and a sixth at this moment. I could definitely see them accumulating more picks. Like they keep coming up as a team that has great potential to trade down out of 24. If someone's after a quarterback, say one of those quarterbacks in the first round slides, if someone really wants somebody there, you can imagine them dropping, somewhere between 4 and 8 spots, staying in the first round, but picking up some additional draft capital to then take, maybe another top 100 pick somewhere along the way. I could see that happening. Kevin O'Connell did not necessarily make it clear what they're going to do, and of course he wouldn't, because his job is to maintain as much flexibility as possible. But here's what he said when asked about kind of the idea of where they are on their draft board and what they might need going into the draft.
Starting point on all of that would be looking at what we did in free agency, where I truly do feel like we have a roster that really, I don't know if we're going to be on the clock at any one of those particular 4 picks and think we need to do anything. But at the same time, I think where the depth of this draft is, and you're not only just drafting for 2025, you're trying to build something that sustains, and what does your depth look like at different positions, and where can you have really competitive situations that'll make your team better. I think we've gone about the process as if we have much more than 4 picks. It certainly feels like it, and I'm sure it'll really feel like it on Thursday and Friday and Saturday when we're recognizing a lot of these names that are getting selected. But at the same time, when our picks come up, we should have a really, really good feel for the players in those areas and have done a lot of work on the players that will inevitably be adding to the team. So don't look at it as anything more than a positive outcome from what we did in free agency. A lot of the guys we targeted are Minnesota Vikings, and that's across offense, defense, that's across a lot of different positions. And to know that the target to get them to sign ratio, we're hitting for a pretty good average right now for a lot of different reasons, a lot of different people who put in a lot of hard work and what this place has become, and players want to come play here. So now we've got a roster we feel like we can really truly be selective on who we're going to pick and what that looks like in conjunction with what our depth charts and our team already look like.
So I think the big takeaway here is that they acknowledged that this year's roster looks pretty good because of what they were able to do in free agency last year and this year. But the depth is not going to be there forever if they don't start drafting better, if they don't start accumulating more young players through the draft and maybe even through undrafted free agency that will eventually fill these roles. They're just not going to be able to do this forever. You can't just keep plugging all your holes with free agency. So in that sense, this year's draft is important. It might not be a ton of guys who have immediate big-time impact. I would certainly expect that with their first pick, but maybe not through the rest of the draft, at least not needing those guys to step up right away. So long story short, Jay, I don't think they're going to trade into the 6th and 7th rounds, but it would not surprise me to see 1 or 2 trades on day 1 or day 2 to try to pick up some extra picks from teams that want certain things at those spots. If you're not married to those spots, if you don't feel like you have as much need as other teams, you could see them trying to scoop up another third rounder, another fourth rounder, a few more swings at guys they like. Maybe at those positions you were talking about, Jay, running back, interior defensive line, where then maybe they have the chance to beef up that depth going forward. And quickly, the other question from Jay was outside of kicker, punter, or long snapper, what position would I be most surprised by them drafting? And it was an interesting question because I couldn't define one where I would just be absolutely astonished. But when you don't have when you don't go into the draft with as many picks, and you have just spent a first-round pick on a quarterback, I would have to say quarterback falls into that category for me. Like, some teams will take one every year. It wouldn't shock me to see the Vikings take a flyer on a guy they thought they could develop into a backup in the future. But if you have limited picks and you already have a guy like Brett Rippon who you think highly of as a developmental guy, if you've already made it pretty clear you are going to sign a veteran backup at some I shouldn't even say backup, a veteran at some point along the way, Drafting a quarterback this year just doesn't make sense. I could see them taking one next year to kind of fill that developmental need, but right now I'd say quarterback, given their kind of where they are in the draft, where they are with their kind of young quarterbacks, that would be the one that would surprise me the most. Let's talk Twins today with Star Tribune beat writer Bobby Nightengale. Likely to bring a more measured approach to the segment than Monday, when Royce basically said trade everybody who's of anybody worth. If anybody wants them, come get them. I don't know if that's your message, Bobby, and I don't think that's what the Twins are saying yet. But 7-15 is raising a certain level of concern already in this season.
Yeah, I mein, there's definitely have to be concern, but I think there's a difference between concern and trade everyone and blow it all up and start it all over. I've covered 100 lost teams before. I've covered underachieving teams. I don't think the Twins are a terrible team that, okay, let's blow it up. This isn't working. And I think that inside the organization, it's not like, I think they're kind of on the same thing as where the starting pitching's been pretty good outside of Joe Ryan got hit around on Sunday in Atlanta. They end up losing that game. But overall, I mean, their starting pitching since the first week of the season really has been quite good. I mean, you're talking about like a 2 ERA for the starting pitching. If that continues, I mean, there's no way you can lose 95 games with starting pitching that good. Of all the bad teams I've covered, the common theme is they can't pitch. Obviously, the hitting has to turn around. They're not. I get the luck thing. No one wants to talk about luck when it's been 3 weeks and they're not hitting. But if you look at like batting average on balls in play, it's historically low. If it continued like this for the entire season, it'd be the worst in Twins history. So I don't think it's the worst offense in Twins history either. Obviously it comes at a good time. They're playing the White Sox and the Angels on a homestand. You go 4-2, I think things start to look a little bit differently. You go 6-0 like last year where you had the terrible start and you won 12 in a row. Your season looks a little bit different. So concern level for me, and I think the team is probably in a similar spot, probably like a 5 out of 10. Is even though they're 7-15, second to worst start in franchise history. I don't think it's 10 out of 10 where that start thinking about trading people.
No, and Royce's just 22 games in. I don't think they're not there, and I think Royce's just frustrated as anybody would be who's watched the team for a long time. I think where a greater potential for concern comes in is when it's fashionable to add 7-15 to 12-27, which is how they finished last year, and then say, okay, what is that? 19-42. And before that, we forget that they went 63-40 in the 103 games before that, because they had the 7-13 start, then 63-40, then 12-27. It was a bizarre season where they were either, playing at a 100-win pace or they were playing at a last place pace. It was like there was no in between with them, and then they've started again that way this year. Has there been a carryover psychologically from last year? Has there been a carryover in terms of how they're losing from last year to this year?
You can draw the line and say, they finished the season so terribly and so many of the same guys are back and that's the reason they're struggling. But is Ty France, does he fit into their struggles? Because he wasn't here. Joe Ryan wasn't even here when they were struggling a year ago. And, Harrison Bader. There's enough new guys where I think it plays into the narrative. Okay, they struggled at the end of last season. They're struggling this year. Look how bad the franchise has fallen. But I think if you take it at its kind of core, this is how they started last year. Same thing. Then they got to play two really bad teams, the White Sox and the Angels, which they will this week, and they turned their season around, as you mentioned. That things came together over the summer. Now, they probably weren't as good as that record said. They had a terrible record against teams that, like the Yankees and the Philly, like the really, really good teams. They were not beating those teams, but they were beating the bad teams. And I think that's the difference this year is they haven't played well against bad teams. Like the Braves, they're a really good team on paper. They're a team that could easily win 95 games this year, but they weren't playing very well either. They were making as silly a mistake as the Twins were. I just think defensively, it seems like everything that could go wrong has kind of gone wrong in terms of infield defense. Pitchers can't throw to bases. Ty France has made a couple. Willie Castro's made, I think, 4 errors. So, I mean, Willie Castro shouldn't be one of your worst defenders. He should be better. I just feel like it's one little thing is kind of setting them off. And also it's the offense. I mean, the offense wasn't scoring at the end of September. It's not scoring now. There's no margin for error. Griffin Jacks, obviously, you mentioned him and the struggles he's had. And I think it's more like I don't think there's a huge worry in terms of like Griffin Jack's stuff. He's still throwing the same velocity. There's still the same movement on his pitches. I think the big concern is just like how the games he's losing. I mean, it's just like the Yordan Alvarez, I think, was a 3-run lead against Houston where he could have won that series. Obviously, blowing the game against the Braves on Friday could have set him up. That would have been a 3-game winning streak. You would have felt really good going into the last 2 games winning a series in Atlanta. So I think like if there was like, I know he has a negative WAR, but if it was like a negative vibes WAR, it would be even lower just because like how big a wins those could have been that he's been costing him so far. But I don't think it's just a carryover from last year. I think there are some separate things this year that need to be pointed out. I think it feeds the narrative though that the end bad and start bad, so they are bad.
Negative vibes war is definitely going to be something I use again. Maybe it's an episode title for this one. I think you hit on a lot of the things that have gone wrong collectively. And I was just writing a little while ago kind of something on Buxton because Royce kind of went off on this tangent Monday. Buxton's been kind of the one like semi-consistent bright spot where even when he wasn't hitting as well earlier in the season, you saw the player that you've wanted him to be for a long time, and he just hasn't been healthy enough to be that guy consistently. But now, I mean, he's flying around the bases. He's playing almost every day. I think he's played 20 out of the 22 games they've played so far this season, mostly in center field. He looks like that guy. However, his 751 OPS, which is a good OPS, but that's not like, we're not talking, league leading or even like it's a perfectly good OPS. That is the best on the team of anybody who's healthy right now and playing regularly. That is extremely problematic. They have a lot of guys who aren't hitting right now and haven't hit for a while, and that's the one area I'm not as worried about. The pitching, and again, the starting pitching's been pretty good. The bullpen, if Jacks get straightened out, and Alcala, we'll see about that. Less confidence there, but the offense worries me in their ability to turn it around to the level where they could consistently, put up, 7 out of 9 games that they win. It seems like there's too many holes in the lineup right now.
Yeah, that's fair. And especially you lose Wallner. I think that's a bigger loss than probably gets credit for, just because they don't really have many guys that you look at and go, okay, he's a power threat. He's going to hit 25 homers this year. There's really not that many guys in the lineup, and they just lost one of them for this is not going to be a 10-day stint. He's going to be out a little bit. So, especially with Royce Lewis too. I mean, it's hard to lose both those guys. Royce is obviously trending on the way back, but I think the lineup looks a lot different when you have a Wallner and a Royce Lewis in the middle of it, and then Luke Keeschel obviously living up to the hype early on.
Yeah, he's good.
That's encouraging. Edward Julian, I think, is really taking a step forward. I know statistically it's not there yet, but if you look at like under the hood, a lot of the metrics that like a lot of hitters look at, he's hitting the ball hard. He's actually hitting off-speed pitches, which he wasn't doing a year ago. Obviously, the strikeouts, he's going to look at some strike threes, but as soon as he starts drawing walks, I think he's going to look a lot like he did 2 years ago when he was really igniting the lineup. But I agree with you. I mean, it's one of those. Yeah, it's contagious, but how many guys can carry the lineup at a time? I mean, Buxton can definitely do that. But they don't really have many guys that like, okay, if he gets hot, they're going to win games just because that one guy's hot. Wallner had the ability to do that. Royce Lewis can do that. Those two guys are hurt. Probably need like Trevor Larnach to get hot. And he's had a slow start. So I agree with you. I mean, that's got to be a concern. They are doing some things well in terms of just like, like if you look at like how many pitches they're barreling, how hard they're hitting the ball, they are about league averages in those metrics. So it's not like everything has gone wrong. They're not hitting the ball hard at all. They're grounding out every at bat. Obviously, Carlos Correa has gotten off to a terrible start offensively. But I do think at some point the results have to come, and it's okay, who can carry the lineup when the results come? And they don't have very many of those guys. And I agree with you. That's the one concern. I think that's where it comes back to the starting pitching has been so strong this year outside of a handful of starts that they don't need them to score 6 runs a game. It's just, can you get to 5 and play decent enough defense to help out those pitchers?
5, they take 3 some nights. It hasn't been there consistently enough. But you're right. I think Wallner was a guy I thought was going to have a breakout season, and he was having a good year when he got hurt. That is a loss. And of course, like you said, Royce Lewis, if he's hitting to his potential and healthy, makes the lineup different. And then Correa off to a terrible start. Like if you a lot of ifs, and we're given benefit of the doubt for this team right now does require a lot of ifs, but if you factor in health and better production from those 3 guys, the lineup does look different. Harrison Bader has been a pleasant surprise. I would not put a lot of other people in the pleasant surprise category so far, though, and that's another kind of sign of nobody's really overachieving at this point that you would want to say, okay, didn't expect that out of them. They're giving you more than you thought.
Yeah, and I think that's been probably the reason behind the slow start is just that they haven't had guys that, okay, wow, he's really impressed. He's a different player than we thought he was. And going into the year, I remember talking to Phil Miller about it. I mean, on paper, they look like a team that, like, okay, a lot of these guys underachieved last year. Like you talk about Matt Wallner, he had that terrible start, had a really good second half when he came back to the majors. But it was like, okay, if he could put that together a whole year, that changes the lineup. And obviously he was the one guy who had a great start and then gets injured. But like Trevor Larnach he crushed the ball last year, and it felt like there was some bad luck, but he still ended up as a league average hitter. Byron Buxton, obviously there's room for him to improve. Carlos Correa was really good last year. So it felt like, okay, there's going to be some natural improvement just because of the guys that underachieved, and those guys haven't done it yet. And you wonder how much is that like their approach, because one, they're not walking. And I think that's a concern is they are hitting okay with runners in scoring position. Like I feel like in the past, the last couple of years, it's always been like they load the bases with no outs and they can't score those runs. I feel like They're doing the little things well. They're moving guys over when they're on second base with 1 out. They're knocking runners in when they're on third with fewer than 2 outs. I think they're doing the little things well. It's just they're not getting guys on base like they have in the past, and I think that's concerning. And my one question is, like, will that improve when you don't have Wallner and Royce Lewis in the lineup? Because there's no reason to try to walk these guys. There's no really reason to pitch around guys just based off the fact, like, you look at Christian Vasquez, that 14 pitch at bat he had, I think it was Saturday in Atlanta at the end of the game, and it's like, okay, if you put him on, there's really not anyone behind him that scares you, and that's the concern. I mean, you need the Byron Buxtons to continue his hot streak. You need Carlos Correa to turn his season around, just so it puts some more pressure on, okay, if you're not going to throw strikes to those guys, we're going to make you pay. And they really haven't made guys pay just because they're not putting guys on base and they're not drawing walks.
They've made some moves already sending Miranda down, bringing up Luke Keyshaw, who had a nice debut against Atlanta. Even though they got swept, he was hitting the ball. He looks like he belongs in the lineup. So there are, like, various levers they can pull. They've already brought up Festa. Zebby Matthews looks great in St. Paul by and large. So that's another potential move they can make if they feel like they need him in the rotation at some point. So, nothing about what they've done so far suggests panic. It just suggests that these are moves they want to try to do to improve the team. But where do you imagine and where do you know from conversations, where is Rocco Baldelli's kind of level of concern? Where is Derek Falvey's level of concern? I mean, 22 games is not a panic point, but this is not the start they want to be off to.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously frustration just based off the start. I mean, everyone kind of knows after the way last season ended how, if they had a good start, how much that would have boosted kind of the franchise. You see, season ticket sales are down. You already see it in the low attendance totals through the first month. So obviously this isn't what they wanted, but I do think it's one of those, like, okay, how bad can the offense actually be? Can it really struggle this much? I mean, there's more faith in, okay, they should be scoring more than 3 runs a game. And they're barely getting to that total. I mean, it's almost fewer than 3 runs a game right now. And I forgot what the stat was, but it was like 9 of the first 15 games or 9 of the first 16, they scored 2 or fewer. So, I mean, it's one of those, it's got to be more consistent. It's not, I don't think it's a talent issue. I mean, there should be enough talent where if the starting pitching continues pitching the way it does, that's at least a 500 team, and 500 in the American League Central is usually good enough to fight for a playoff spot. So I do feel like it's one of those, give it patience. It's got to turn around. Now, the question is, if they fall on their face against the White Sox and Angels, that's when I think the panic meter gets hit, and you start feeling a lot more concerned. But if they go 4-2 against the White Sox and the Angels, I don't know where that puts their record. Like, there'd still
11
be
and
5,
17, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're 6 games under 500. You still have a hole to climb out of, but it doesn't look as daunting if you take care of business, and you don't need a 12-game winning streak to climb out of it. I mean, it's just one of those: start playing better, and let your pitching kind of win you games.
It does feel like this is an important week then, like, one way or the other. If it's either going to be, okay, more of the same, or okay, you start to, you, at least even if it's bad teams you're beating up on, you start to feel a little bit better about yourselves. You kind of get, this would take us up pretty close to the start of May. You're in a month into the season. You kind of can assess at that point. Where are we at, before we finish up, where are we at with some of these kind of longer term injuries? You got Lopez still out, Wallner, Lewis. Like, when should we expect to start hopefully seeing these guys back on the field?
Yeah, I'd expect Pablo this week. He's eligible to come back Thursday, so I'd expect him to start. He started Saturday in St. Paul, so I think that lines them up for Thursday or Friday. So I'd expect probably the Angel series. You'll see him pitch. Royce Lewis is probably closer to May. When he got hurt, it was basically like a 6-week timetable. It's gonna take 6 weeks for him to build back up. He's doing things. I mean, he's starting to run the bases lightly. He takes batting practice. He does fielding drills. So he's doing things. It's just a matter of getting back to game speed. And the problem with getting hurt in the middle of spring training is, like, okay, you still have to get to the point where you can play 3-4 days in a row without having to sit it for a day or two to rest your leg, and part of that buildup. So it's going to take a little bit of time for Royce, but you can tell how much he's itching at it, and so far so good. I mean, there hasn't been big setbacks. Michael Tonkin seems like he's getting pretty close to joining the bullpen. I mean, Brock Stewart came back after 2 appearances.
Yep.
Seems like Tonkin will be maybe not that quickly, but pretty close. And then Wallner, I mean, that's probably, I don't want to say it's a 6-week injury, but it's one of those, they caution, like, okay, it's not, don't expect him back when the 10 days are up. And if they're saying that pretty early on, it's probably reevaluate in 2 or 3 weeks and then see where we're at. But obviously concerned when it's a hamstring, and he said it was tight the next day. When he woke up, he knew it wasn't going to heal anytime soon. So that one will take a little bit of time. Okay.
Well, that's a lot of key players to be out at any moment. You talked about Griffin Jacks. I mean, that's a big one. And he had, even before he had the game in Atlanta that they lost, he given up those 3 runs or most of the 3 runs, I think, to the Mets in the game they eventually won in extra innings. So, like, that's something they thought they could count on. Then there's something, obviously, where he's not been the same guy. They're hoping that's a short-term thing, but, like, I just wonder at what point, like, assumptions that we've made or they made, and how much evidence do we need to say, maybe this guy isn't going to have the year they thought he was going to have, things like that. Maybe what we thought we could count on, we can't count on at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I still feel like it's too early to draw those lines. Like, I remember,
I do too. Yeah.
Like Chris Paddock, I think, is the big example. Like, after his first 2 starts, everyone like on social media was like, take him out of the rotation. It's Zebby.
Where's Zebby Matthews? Get him up here. Yeah.
And he's been fine since then. I mean, he's playing for a contract. I think people forget, like, he's a free agent at the end of the year. Every start for him matters as much as anybody in terms of how much money he's going to make for his career. So I think he's motivated. Griffin Jacks, I think it's so difficult for relievers. I mean, they're volatile year to year. Duran kind of had that little step back last year. Maybe that's what Griffin Jacks is kind of experiencing but the weird thing with him is, like, velocity, it's the same. Movement's the same. Until he got blown up in Atlanta. I mean, he wasn't walking guys, which, so he's just giving up hits, which is a weird thing because he doesn't really give up hits. So I think before it was kind of just confunnling, and now it was like, okay, maybe he's getting inside his own head when he's walking guys, especially with the 3-run lead. I mean, that shouldn't be happening. So maybe a little bit more concerned in terms of just, like, finding the right spots to put him in until he gets his confidence back. But I still think they think he's the same pitcher as usual. I don't think there's a concern that, we put too much faith into Griffin Jacks, and, maybe that means a bigger role for Louis Varland for a little bit, or another reliever. But, Brock Stewart just came back. So I feel like they're well equipped to say, maybe he's the 6th inning guy for a couple of weeks instead of the 8th or 9th inning guy.
Interesting. Well, We will see. Like I said, big week. It wouldn't normally feel like a big week when you're having a two home series against Chicago and the Angels. But when you get off to a start like this, when we look at, what was a catalyst for a slow start last year, it feels like it's magnified at this point. There might not be a ton of people to see it. Royce was kind of joking that, if we thought attendance for that first White Sox series was bad, if they set the all-time record for lowest target field attendance, and we're maybe going to have some drizzly stuff in here the next few days, who's going to be at those White Sox games? But yeah, you never know. We'll see. We'll see how big they are. We'll see how big these games end up being by the end of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot made of the attendance so far. Obviously, the lowest in target field history is going to. That's a headline.
It's headlines, yeah.
But I don't think the game was 30 degrees too. I mean, it's not like you're drawing walk-up fans and people are saying we're not going to support the Twins anymore. And if this continues in June, I think that's the concerning point. I think at this point it just says season ticket sales went down, and after last year, I'm not surprised. I think being off TV is what really kind of destroyed the fan base ticket wise. Curious to see if that trend continues, but like you said, big series against the White Sox, and Mike Trout's playing amazing for the Angels right now. I think he has 8 or 9 homers already. So that's not a cakewalk like maybe it was a year ago where Angels looked terrible against them last year. So playing a little bit better, but Twins have to play better. I mean, it's simple as making their pitchers throw to first base without airmailing the throw. I mean, at some point, those mistakes they have to go away. Otherwise, you are looking at blowing up a little bit.
All right, Bobby. Appreciate it. Follow Bobby's stuff, Star Tribune, StarTribune.com. We'll talk to you down the road.
Sounds great. Thanks, Mike.
Great stuff from Bobby. Again, like I said, more measured than Patrick Royce. No surprise there. I'm still curious. I'm trying to wait this thing out. They don't look good right now. They don't look like they have a lineup that is capable of scaring teams. And it seems like too many things can go wrong on a given night for the Twins. But you put together a 5-1 stretch right now. You put together even 4-2, like Bobby said, bare minimum. You start to look at it. You say, okay. Maybe some of the things that you think of as bad luck right now, batting average on balls in play, things like that. Maybe some of these things smooth out. Maybe they're not as bad as we think they are. And if they're not as bad as we think they are, maybe they can kind of get themselves back into this. It's not too late. It is getting late early, as they say. And a big homestand, one that you would normally just think of as an opportunity to play good baseball, now becomes pretty important against the White Sox and the Angels. Let us finish with the cooler. Like I said at the jump, Wolves at 9, Wild at 10 tonight. 2 very different series, 2 very different feelings I have about these games. First, Wolves-Lakers. Feeling like you're going to get everything from the Lakers tonight, right? If they have, designs on trying to help LeBron be competitive for a championship in his age 40 season, these are not going to come along that much longer. You would think this is his 22nd year in the league, which is just amazing. I still remember covering him at a tournament in 2003, and now here we are in 2025. That was a senior year in 2003, and now 2025, 22 years later. Just amazing what he has been able to do. He is still a great player. Luka Doncic is absolutely still a very good scorer, one of the best shot creators, shot makers in the league. They've got talent. They've got all the possibilities. I don't believe much in their supporting cast, but I also am of the mind that they can't play much worse. You're going to see better from their supporting cast as well. What will the Wolves do in the face of a better Lakers effort? That's what I want to see. If they come out and control this game again, this will be a short series. This will be a very short series. If the Lakers come out and reestablish some of the things we thought that they were going to do in Game 1, this is going to be at least a 6-game series. It's just that simple. So a lot to watch for tonight, but I feel a lot better about the Wolves after watching Game 1 than I did going into Game 1, which is an understatement to be sure. The Wild, I don't feel good about this at all. They basically played the kind of game they would have wanted to play the other night, and they still lost. They stayed way out of the penalty box, but the one time they went in, Vegas scored the go-ahead goal on the power play, like 5 or 6 seconds into the power play. That gave them that 2-1 lead. I think Vegas just has too much on special teams. I think Vegas is just the better team. The Wild dominated some stretches of 5-on-5 play, particularly when their first line was out there, and that was a good thing to see. That will benefit them surely especially when they come home for games 3 and 4 later this week. I just don't think they have enough to beat Vegas. I don't think this is a series that's going to go the max for sure. This feels like it could be a 5-gamer, a polite gentleman's sweep. I am willing to be proven wrong. If it's the same kind of game it was the other night, the Wild have a chance. If the refs call this tighter and each team gets 3 or 4 power play chances, don't love the way this is headed. So we'll see where it goes tonight. You're going to be staying up late, 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock. Just ridiculous. But then we'll get home games galore later this week. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Wild Wolves, and away we go. That will do it for me today. Like I said, plenty of great stuff coming up. Bonus Wolves podcast late tonight after the game. Emily Leiker talking Vikings tomorrow. Draft on Thursday. Tons of Wild content on tomorrow's regular show as well. So stick around, listen up. We'll be back at it before you know it.